Episode 1 of Secret Ingredient Cooking. Today we're going to focus on something that you don't really hear much about in the context of anybody's cooking show, and that's kitchen safety. I have a background, engineering background, where I spent many decades involved in something called process safety, where you look at the stuff that can go wrong in terms of people and the process and the chemicals and all that stuff, and you analyze it and you try to find ways to stop problems. And kitchen safety, as they say, is just not a topic you hear much about. So today I wanted to go over 3 areas specifically: slips, trips, and falls. I want to talk about cuts, avoiding cuts actually, and I want to talk about burns and fire. And the key we're going to find as we go through this together is that in all cases, situational awareness is really the key thing. You just have to be thinking, what am I doing? What can go wrong with it? What am I doing to stop something from going wrong? And if it does, what is my response? So, situational awareness. Let's start with fires. Turns out your kitchen is the most common place for a fire to occur in a house. Why is that? If you go back to the old fire triangle, you need 3 things for fire. Oxygen, well, we're good on that. We have something flammable. Well, we tend to be dealing with stuff that can at some point burn. And then the third thing is an ignition source. Well, particularly if you have a gas stove, it's a pretty obvious ignition source, but electricity will certainly create enough heat to set things on fire. So, what is our response to a fire? Well, I'd like to go over a little on fire extinguishers. Once again, it's something people tend to not think about, but there's about 4 or 5 main types of fire extinguishers, and you'll see different ratings on them. So let's say you see something that has an A on it. A means it's meant for wood and paper type fires. Most likely it's water-based, and it's just going to cool the fire down to the point where it's going to go out. Well, A is not going to work well on something that involves oils, greases, gasolines, things like that. That would be a B extinguisher. A C extinguisher is for electrical fires. A lot of times you have something that's combination ABC or BC rated. That's actually the one I have over here, is BC. And there are other ones like D is for magnesium and lithium, things that we aren't going to be dealing with, although reality is we all have lithium batteries in our pockets or purses most likely nowadays with our phones or with your EV, even your electric vehicle. There's also another newer category I wasn't that familiar with, but I think I'll be switching this one out. It's a 711A, which is meant for residential cooking equipment. And that is specifically dealing with the type of grease fire that we would commonly see in a kitchen. Turns out those, as well as a lot of the B and C ones, are actually sodium bicarbonate is what in it, and it smothers the fire. One of my favorite activities when I was working in the chemical plant, we used to have fire extinguisher training. So you'd get out there and you'd actually get to put out fires, and you realize there's a little skill to what you're doing you need to know. And so in this case, let's say you do have one of those 711A ones, fire breaks out, you grab your extinguisher. Well, an extinguisher this size, you have maybe 8 seconds worth of material in there, 6 to 8. Slightly larger ones, 8 to 12 seconds. So it's not like you get to spend a lot of time messing with this. I mean, you need to direct it at the base, go back and forth, and in your head be kind of counting down the fact that this thing's going to run out. Fire extinguishers are by definition for small fires. So if I was to look and this whole thing's up, you got to evacuate, you're leaving, you're not putting that out with the fire extinguisher. If it's an incipient fire, it's just kind of getting going, yeah, you can get that in that 6 to 12 seconds of fire extinguisher. So once again, I really urge everyone, make sure you have a fire extinguisher in your kitchen area that you can get to readily. Second thing, let's talk about burns. We're dealing with hot stuff all the time. Certain things like oils, when we're frying and stuff, that's asking for a problem. When you're dealing with heat, of course, the obvious answer is to have something like these are nice silicone-based gloves. You know, you're going to pick something up that's hot. But situational awareness, let's come back to that term. Suppose I just made this these blueberry loaves. Suppose I'd taken one of these out of the oven. I had my mitts on, set it down, and I looked at it and said, you know, I'm going to give it a few more minutes. I grabbed it. I wasn't aware of the fact this whole thing's hot. Most of this pan's life, it's not hot. So in your mind, you're not always aware of the fact something's hot. So that key thing, situational awareness. Here's a ceramic bowl. We use these a lot. When they come out of the microwave, they're really hot. And so if I just grab it, ouch, burn. So keep aware of what you're doing when you're doing it. I also have a simple little thing I do is I try to keep a standard. I don't put anything that readily burns on top of the oven. There are times you want to set something down. You say, just for a second. Well, I'll just set this down. I don't even allow myself that. So keep the awareness going. Let's move on now to cuts, knives, all the things that can go wrong with knives. I have a selection of knives here. Had a good day out in the garden, picking a lot of stuff yesterday. So let's say if I'm going to cut this Melrose pepper up, what's known around Chicago as a Melrose pepper, could use this big cleaver, but it's not really the right knife for the job. So a lot of what you're dealing with is find the right tool for what you're doing. I like to use this French knife. It's a high carbon steel knife. Carbon steel is twice as hard as stainless high carbon steel. So what you find is the knife doesn't dull out, you know, which is good because a dull knife is a recipe for problems in its own right. These ones have a wood handle, carbon steel. They don't go in the dishwasher, but as long as you clean it up readily, not a problem. So with this, one of the key things when chopping is people want to do something like hold it. No, you need to like almost put your fingernails down into it, create this surface so the knife is going against that, not this, right? You're creating something where there's less chance of going into you, okay? So when you do this, right, much safer approach. If I'm chopping something bigger, I may want a bigger knife. I don't know if you ever had it where that you've had like a lemon or lime or something that have been in the fridge a little longer and they start to get a bit harder, and that also is an easy time to slip. Something slips and it can slip into you. So here my recommendation is that you make kind of a starter cut going down, and then you can get your knife blade in there and make the rest of the cut. A lot of times we're dealing with things that are a bit unstable, like here's an acorn squash I grew. So once again, with this, make that starter cut and then go through it, right? I actually don't want to cut this one. I wasn't planning on making anything with acorn squash today, but use the right knife for the job. Let's say if I'm chopping a handful of walnuts. Now here's a good knife for that. You can do this and you can kind of rock your way back and forth. Right now you see my hand's on top, right? My hand is out of the source of danger and I can very quickly do what I want there. Just some little tips on knife safety. Okay, so once again, we don't want anyone out there getting hurt. Our third topic we have is slips, trips, and falls. And kitchen is also another area. We have water. We're always dealing with water. Water can be hot. It can have oils in it, the oils can splatter. Your floor can very readily become slippery. Situational awareness. What is going on when that happens? If you start to realize it, hey, clean it up right away. Don't figure, oh, it'll go away. It's not going to go away. And so just get on stuff, take care of it. I remember 20 plus years ago, a safety video we watched at work one time. It was called Small Falls Are a Big Deal. And in it, it was put on by a guy who was an EMT fireman. He told some of the stories of things he dealt with. When you think of falls, you tend to think of something from elevation, but he told a story of a fatality that was 0 elevation in a kitchen. How do you kill yourself in a kitchen falling? Well, someone had their dishwasher, it was open. Floor was apparently slippery in some fashion. And if you have a knife facing up in your dishwasher, well, that's probably a bad idea. But if you slip and fall, this is secret ingredient cooking. And secret ingredient, if you didn't know, that one your grandma and your mom all used, love. And so it's in that vein that we're putting this video out, because we don't want to see anyone getting hurt. You know, I would hate to think that you're making my family's German potato salad recipe and you sliced a big chunk out of your hand. Let's not do that, okay? All right. Well, I hope this has been educational. Maybe it's upped your sense of situational awareness. You know, another word for that that's a little more trendy is mindfulness. But just think through what you're doing before you do it and be aware that things can go wrong. I'll see you on the flip burger side.